Hi, we are Hernán Wilkinson and Juan Vuletich. We lead the development of Cuis Smalltalk. So, okay. Cuis Smalltalk is an open source Smalltalk. I guess most people know what Cuis Smalltalk is about and how it came to be. So I will repeat it again for those who maybe don't know. So, I guess everybody know a little bit about the story of Cuis Smalltalk, the project in the 90s from Alan Kay teams. They did Cuis Smalltalk to support the Cuis project, and they led the project and the community for several years. And after several years, their research focus changed a little bit and other things happened, and they left Squeak in the hands of the community, okay? And the community struggled for several years in trying to organize its own leadership and decision procedures, okay? So around 2003 and 2004, several of us were working on Squeak. I've been working in the Squeak community since the start. At that time, I was leading the effort to refactor and to rework the morphic system in Squeak. And around that time, it started to become clear that different parts of the Squeak community wanted different things from the system. Some people valued backwards compatibility and the continuity of the Cuis project over everything else, and other people had other ideas for the future. So around that time, both Faro and Cuis were born, and Faro and Cuis took a different approach to a strategy for the future. Okay, so for Cuis, we defined some values. Okay, that you can check the Cuis README at GitHub, and then it is written in some wording, and here is a bit different one for the same ideas. The idea is to try to go back to the original Smalltalk 80 values, where as a system that is simpler and easier to understand, is easier to evolve, and is easier to move into whatever future you want to go. Okay, so I don't think there's need for me to read exactly what I wrote over there, but it's the general idea. Okay, we see a general trend in most software systems, especially mainstream ones, not so much Smalltalk systems, but mainstream systems are turned into layers over layers of different things, with people working only at one layer level and not knowing much about the rest, and that makes evolution essentially impossible. The only way to evolve is to build yet another layer on whatever was below and forget about the rest. And that's not what we want. We want something closer to design principles behind Smalltalk, for example, or all that classic ideas. So I started Cuis with that idea, and a community was formed around it, and we're still working on the same values. What is the same?
So yeah, now my time.
Your turn.
My turn. So yeah, but not everything is technical, as you may know. It's also human, and we are humans, and we live in a community. So that's very important also for Cuis. So what about the community? Well, first of all, we started using Cuis like a year and a half or 2 years ago at the university, and it's been amazing how the students took it and how they are contributing. For example, just this last semester, we have more than 10, I think we are already on 15 contributions from students that are at the third year of the university. So our students that are not used to work for the industrial companies, they're just studying, but they are contributing with refactorings, they are contributing with stuff, for example, changing the debugger, making some stuff nicer, and so on, and it's amazing. That's really helpful. And most importantly is, we are getting more people into the Smalltalk community. Of course, there is a catch for that. If they contribute to Cuis, they get a point more at the final grade. But anyway, it works. So we also have, of course, a list that you can contribute. We have 1,000 people contributing all the time there. Packages, around 100 packages with 20 different authors. And also the rest of the community is using or trying Cuis in different ways, like Serge said the other day with TensorFlow and other things from Luciano Francesco. The people doing the VM also use Cuis to test the VM and so on. So we are not an island separated from the rest, all the other around. Also the wise elders like Cuis, like Dan said to Juan. And so even though we are not a big community, we are around 200 people using Cuis on a regular basis, we are really happy with what we have.
I want to add that this community has been growing slowly, but at a rather good rate and a positive rate over 15 years, okay? So now we are maybe a couple of hundred people who use Cuis. Using Cuis in the university meant a big growth of the community, but it was already growing. Okay? There are many people who have been using Cuis for at least 5 or a few more years now. So it's a rather, there is a group of people that has been with us for a long time and like the approach and help with useful discussion on how to move forward.
It's a stable community.
It's a stable community.
So finally, so the idea is to have a community where everybody can contribute, feel safe contributing, discussing stuff, and being sure that nobody's going to say, no, you're saying stupid stuff, all those kind of things. A place where everybody can feel appreciated and, of course, have a good time doing Smalltalk. So that's very important for us. So what about projects? So I'm going to show some projects or some stuff that have been doing.
No, it's off. I can.
Thank you. So these are, for example, we have new refactorings. Cuis lacked refactorings a year ago or so. So we rewrote we wrote a new refactoring engine, and the good thing about it is that it's new. It's based on TDD, Doctor.
So it's not a port of a refactoring engine. It's a new refactoring engine
so
wrote for Cuis.
It's interesting sometimes when you do stuff that already exists, because you can bring new ideas without having the back compatibility issues. So, for example, this is the last one Nahuel Garbesa from University of Quilmes did. This is struct method. Of course, it's not new for us, but I don't know. You can struct. And one interesting thing about this is that all the refactorings are contextual. So if I do a rename, it will rename the selector where I'm on. For example, if I'm here in a variable and I do a rename, it will rename the variable. If I'm here, it will rename that method. So that's very interesting. But also, we have other refactorings, like, for example, which one I was going to use? Okay, I remember come on, this one. This refactoring is called struct method. The struct method is, sorry, not struct method, struct to method object. So it extracts a method and creates a class from that method. And that's very common when you have ugly code like this. So what it does, struct to method object, is a very complex refactoring. Not other Smalltalk I know have this refactoring. You have to put the name of the class where you have to move that method to, for example, prime factors. Where do you want to put it? In which category? Let's say Smalltalks 2019, small. Smalltalks. and how do you want that to be, the message to activate that instances of that class. Number to factorize is how you want to call the parameter. No, sorry, this is number to factorize. Well, let me call it original. I'm not writing correctly. Okay, and this is how you're gonna call the instance creation message. Well. And now we can see that it replaced that method with instantiation of the class, and the class has, of course, the instance creation message and the value that does exactly what the other had. So now you can start making this code a little bit nicer. And another one that is interesting is the introduce null object, and that's very common when we have things like this. Address is nil, do something, if not, do other thing, and all those kind of things. So we have this introduce null object that will replace all those message sends to address with a new null object. So implements the null object pattern. And in this case, you have to have the classes already created, so I have them there. The null class is unknown address, and the concrete class is known address. And now you have to put the name of the messages that will send instead of sending the is nil if true is false. So in this case, I'm going to use street because that's what I want to know. And on this other case, it's just print string. So if we do the refactoring, okay, that's because I was playing with it. You will see that now it says address print string, address street. On the null object, you have print strings that returns no address, street that returns the unknown street, and of course, in this case, the street already was there, so it didn't do anything, and also print string is there, so it doesn't do anything. So that's a way of removing nils from your code. That's a refactoring that doesn't exist in any other IDE I'm aware of. What else? So we have TDD Guru. It's not exactly the same as Dr. TDD, but similar. The idea is that it allows us to, and the students to know if they're doing TDD correctly, but not in an online way as Dr. TDD, but as offline way. So let's say I create a test, and then let's make it fail. And now let's make it pass, like that. So I can now check how I did. It takes all the changes. We populated the changes with the execution result and all those kind of things. So I'm going to run it from here, and you can see if you are doing TDD correctly or not. So now if I create a new test, and create a new test, and create a new test, that's not TDD, and Leandro knows why. So it will tell you, okay, you are not doing TDD because at this point you added a new test, blah, blah, blah. And so it's very nice because it allows you also to see how was the path that somebody did in the development cycle. What else? So we have Cuis University that is like Cuis with a bunch of packages.
It's like a distribution.
Yeah, like a distribution. It comes with Aconcagua and Chalten, and we can do nice stuff like this. So the colon, no, I don't want to do that. That's a message, so that allows us to create a time of a day, and of course, how much time we have left. Oh, we are 3 minutes now because we started later, so doesn't matter. So, and this, I'm going to show you something that a student did. So it's very common every time you instantiate a class to create an instance creation method that, do some validations and then send a new message with initialize and blah, blah, blah. So that's so common that we said, well, why don't we do it automatically? That's something that we did at Markup a long time ago, so now it's in Cuis. So let's create this instance creation message. And so it generates the code for me. I'm going to rename this. And now what we have is the self-new initialize located at street. If I do proceed and I create now the initialization message, it will automatically take the name of the parameter as it was in the other context. So look, it doesn't say a string, it says a street, and it store that to an instance variable that also creates taking the name from what the parameter was. So those kind of things, this was developed by a student, for example. What else? So we have denoted objects. That's something that we show in some previous small talks. The idea of denoted objects is that you only work with objects, not classes. And we have nice examples. For example, one of the exercises students have to make or to do is to implement piano numbers. And we have, this is 0, this is 1, this is 2. And so we can do, I don't know, 2 plus 1, and you will see how it appears, 3. And now we can do, I don't know, 3 times 2, and you will see how the other numbers appear. So it's an interesting exercise to play with, and also another one that is more related with having also an impact visually, like a street light, that they have to also develop just using objects and not classes. So I don't know, those kind of things that are, this denoted object help us a lot to introduce students to objects, thinking about objects first and then start thinking about classes. What else? Well, live typing, I'm going to give a talk about that, so very briefly, I'm going to show just one example of live typing. It's live typing is it allows you to it annotates types while the system is running, so you can see the types of variables. Like for example here, var1 is type of string, var2 is of type small integer and date. So a lot of things can be improved if we have that information. Like for example, the autocomplete. You can see the messages that only a string knows how to answer, and also the description of the message of the implementation as a documentation. But for example, in this case, var2 is of type string and date, small integer and date. They are not polymorphic in all the messages, so the autocomplete will show you only the messages that are common to both types in black, and in blue it will show you only the messages that are answered for any of those types. For example, in this case, by small integer, but in this case, by the other two. But that's very useful, and that allows us to do very nice stuff. Like, for example, if you have this collaboration here, which messages do you think we should show in the autocomplete now? What do you say, Leandro? So, if you really want to show the right messages that you can send, we should show the unary messages of string, the binary messages of string, and the keyword messages of the return type of the binary message, the binary message equals. Yes? So that's impossible to do in a common Smalltalk because you don't have the type, the return type of the equals. Okay? But we do, with live typing, we see that the return type is a Boolean. So now, if I press to see the messages, I won't see the keyword messages of string. You see that I'm only showing unary messages and binary messages. And if I look for keyword messages, it will only show me the keyword messages that Boolean knows how to answer. Louder. If nil? Because if nil is implemented in the unary messages of who? Oh, because maybe you want to do, I don't know, something like this. And then if true. Yeah, because there are no parentheses. Yeah. Okay. So I don't want to talk too much about live typing now. Tomorrow there is a talk about that. Also, we have continuous integration. Thank you, Gaston, Facu, Nico, and Ludat about that. And there are a lot of other research projects we are working on, like we are implementing generics for live typing. That's very difficult and a lot of work. Annotate close. We are also improving live typing. Well, not Ines, somewhere else. I don't know where she is. Working on annotating the types for closure variables. Federico is porting all this to the zip VM because currently only works on the stack VM. There's a guy working on the type checking stuff I'm going to show tomorrow, and also Gaston and Martin that are working in COP. That is a way to show, Gaston is going to show it tomorrow. Okay, now your turn.
So, many would remember that a long time ago I wrote a vector graphics engine that I've been promised would be the next user interface of Cuis. This is not yet happening today, but the news is that this, I can use this one? Okay. The news is that this vector graphic engine that is written in Smalltalk, so it's too slow for drawing the entire Cuis display and morphic desktop. But something that is rather new is that we're using it for rasterizing true type glyphs. So now we can import true type fonts into Cuis. And this is my image, right? Yeah. So now we can do something like, for example, using Donald Knuth fonts in Cuis. Maybe you recognize them. This is another very nice one. And this is done without using FFI, without using free type, without using Quartz or clear type or whatever. This is entirely portable and 100% Smalltalk because the glyphs are drawn and cached. So for those who have never seen it, I want to very briefly show the kind of thing that the vector graphics engine will be able to do in real time soon, hopefully, and it can handling scaling and rotation of all morphs with a very high quality rasterization, better than Cairo and what most people do. And if you try to do this with most other environments, the best you can get is a very pixelated image, like Squeak used to do. And here you have a very good visual quality. And the quality of the vector graphics rasterization is so good that it can be used both for vector graphics and for true type glyphs rasterization. And that's something that no one else does. People use free type for true type and Cairo for general vector graphics, because free type is not general enough for vector graphics and Cairo is not high quality enough for fonts. This single engine can do both things, so that is pretty interesting and new. And the key for making this fast enough to run the whole desktop will be a reimplementation in OpenCL. We have OpenCL bindings. I don't have much time now, but I will be happy to tell in more detail and show to anyone who's interested. OpenCL is a high performance programming languages for GPUs and CPUs and essentially scientific computing and high performance computing, and it can do something like this. This very quick demo is like 20 or 30 frames per second, animating like a megapixel, doing an iterative method for each pixel to compute the fractal. So it's computer is computing intensive, and Smalltalk or even C could never do that at that speed. It's running on the GPU in parallel. So, well, these are the kind of things I have been working on, particularly this year. Other folks from the Cuis community, Mariano and Phil, have been working on doing cool stuff with graphics too. Mariano Montone wrote a Cairo backend that can draw the whole morphic displays and could replace BitBlit if we wanted. He just did it because he felt like doing it. Maybe he needed vector graphics and wasn't willing to wait for my engine to be fast enough. So he just did it with Cairo. And Phil Villalona has been working on OpenGL for a long time, and that's not for replacing the BitBlit engine, but for doing OpenGL stuff, 3D stuff, and that kind of stuff. So.
Okay, so what's next? So the idea is we will start doing a modularization of the image. We want to use GitHub as a really source code repository, something that's not right now. So that's something that we will be working on. Also, yeah.
I just want to say that is not trivial, and it's something that every other Smalltalk dialect is going through, because there is an impedance mismatch between the Smalltalk way of handling changes and evolution of the code and what GitHub wants. So we have been hosting Cuis on GitHub for many years now, but for getting contributions from users, we are still asking them to send change sets to the mail list if the contributions are for the base image. So we want to improve that and make for a better experience for people used to using GitHub as it was meant.
Yes, we also will try to improve the changes model, and that's something really cool, I think, is that we will make light typing part of the official distribution in a short time, I guess. I hope we're working on that. Of course, we're... Yes.
Let me interrupt you again, sorry. Yeah, one of the ideas of Cuis is to include as little as possible in the base image, but to include all the tools that really help coders write code. And we believe that live typing will be a huge contribution to programmer productivity and comfort and pleasure. So we want it to be a part of the base system and to be always available.
Yeah, so we're planning also to have more refactoring, simple ones, the basic ones we all have in other Smalltalks, but also some more complex and composed ones. We're thinking about, taking this idea of Pocho, Jan, and Boris, and put it in some way with the live typing VM. We're still thinking about it. And there are a lot of things to think, like making the compiler take advantage of the type information to generate the peaks instead of waiting for the VM to do it, and also start thinking about the image bootstrapping. So what's the conclusion? Well, Cuis Smalltalk that we think is fulfilling its purpose. It's a nice place to collaborate and learn. It's open place for improvements. There are a lot of things to do and rethink, so it's very nice to contribute, and we are very open to new ideas and new stuff and new code. And it's also an open and friendly community. Most importantly, we are happy and having fun. So thank you. Is there time for question? I don't know if there's time. There are around time. So I don't know if there is a question. Any question? Cool, great. So let's go to the break.